Hi, I'm Britt. This is my channel, Britt Writerly. Welcome back to Writerly Conversations. If you're new here, this channel is a book and an author tube where I talk about the intersections of literature and culture, mostly these days. Like for 2023, that's mostly been on my Friday reading sprints, Friday mornings, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But if you're new here, there's a lot of backlog of video where I did that in lots of different ways, from book reviews to book reactions and blah, blah, blah. So if that's what you want, it is there. And also there's a lot of live stuff from this year also. And also through Writerly Conversations, a collaboration I started with Shay with the Hobbies, where we talk about everything from book reviews to why certain things are trending to why certain formulas are persistent and what are the drawbacks of said formulas. We go all over the place. We even talked about Black love early on. I think that remains one of our like highest watched videos. Y'all ate that up. But anyway, so I will let Shay introduce herself and then we're going to get started about an appropriate October Preptober topic.
Hey everybody, I'm Shay. My channel is Shay with the Hobbies. I be writing, I be reading, I be creating. If that's something you think you could get interested in, go ahead and come on over to my channel. It's stuff going on over there. You'll see when you get there. And so there's that.
That sounds like a Black mama response. Mom, where are we going? You'll see when we get there. Okay, so today, usually for October, we do a Preptober topic of some sort. But if you saw our September video, we already talked about juggling multiple quips or works in progress. So I feel like y'all already have some in the tank. So we're going to sort of go like parallel to Preptober and talk about beta readers. So you want to be a beta reader? What's in a good beta reader? What's in a bad beta reader? What is a beta reader? We're going to get all up in it. Shay, take it away.
All right, so first we're going to start. A beta reader is a little bit different from the other types of readers that you'll have reading your stories. So a beta reader is typically someone who reads in the genre and likes to read. Typically, they're not necessarily another writer as your alpha reader or your critique partners may be. And a beta reader is usually someone who is really good at articulating how they feel about books, are known for being able to give book reviews, and that's something that they do, because you typically pick beta readers who are people who are going to give you feedback on your manuscript before you ever get to the final draft stage. So a beta reader is someone who's reading a draft, so they're not an ARC reader. They haven't read the fully completed thing before you're ready to publish it. They're still kind of a line of defense before you get to that part. Sometimes some people might use beta readers before editors. Some people might use them after an editor just to kind of see how the story is flowing and things like that. But that usually depends on the author. But a beta reader typically is a reader who reads in the genre, that likes to read, is good at articulating how they feel about books, and is more than likely known for reviewing. In my experience, that's what I've come across as far as beta readers go.
So for me, I mean, that response is sufficient as far as definitions, but like some common misconceptions about it when people aren't really cognizant of that definition. It was very thorough. I liked it. So let's just like pick apart little things that when people don't think about that part, they kind of mess up. So one of the things, as I was listening that you were saying was you're known for reviewing in the genre and you can articulate your thoughts well. I don't beta read. I really exclusively function with my critique partners. And so for me, when I thought about like this episode, right, about wanting to be a beta reader, because we talked about beta readers a little bit before and y'all really responded to that. So we thought we'd do a longer video just about betas. But I was like, I mean, I don't beta read. So I kind of use them, but I just use betas for the first time really recently because I pretty much keep it in my critique partner circle. So some things that I, even as a writer, wasn't really mindful of was that, and if y'all can hear this airplane going on, we're on a little experiment where Britt records outside and gets all the nature and the natural lighting. Is it worth it? We're gonna find out together. But anyway, so one thing that I really didn't think about was I already knew that the person needed to be like versed in the genre. But another really important part is it's not like one misconception I had is it's not just about someone who reads the genre a lot. A lot of people read a lot of things a lot, but do they review it? Because when you review something, you do have to articulate your thoughts in an orderly manner in order to make a recommendation to people who are reading your review, right? That's a really important skill. So a misconception about betas that I had was, well, as long as they read the genre a lot, that'll be fine. But not just because you read it a lot does that mean that you have all the qualities that a beta reader needs, like being able to articulate your thoughts according to genre conventions. Just because you read romance a lot doesn't even know that you are really cognizant of the different things that go into writing a romance. It just means that you read it a lot, right? So that's one misconception that I had about it, was just like not minding anything except for quantity and not really thinking about the quality of their reading, the quality of their reviewing.
Yeah, I think a common misconception that I've seen is that it's just reading the story, and it's not. You have to be able to discuss what's going on in the book, like where things go off, where things are not as strong as they could be. And articulation is very, very important with that. Another misconception is because you like the author, like, that makes you a good beta reader for that story. Not necessarily. Not every story an author writes is going to be a great one for you to read. This one might have content that is not necessarily something that's in your wheelhouse. So even though you might read the story and you might be able to give feedback, it might not be the best feedback for that person. So sometimes I think that a misconception is just because I like to read and I like this author that I make a good beta reader. And that's not always the case. I think another misconception is that, just because I want to be a beta reader, I should be a beta reader. And that's not also the case.
Say it
Because like,
again.
honestly, it's not, it is a responsibility. You become responsible to that author. And y'all know me, I take everything really seriously. So, as a beta reader, I would feel bad if something came out in that book later that I could have and should have spoken up about or said something and I didn't. And so that's why being a beta reader is not a small thing. It is really important because, again, you're getting it before it gets to draft. It's not ARC readers who, like, the book is pretty much published at that point. You could probably point out some things, and some things may get changed as an ARC reader, but it's really late in the game, comparatively speaking, to a beta reader, right? And so I think the important thing is to, like, I say this all the time, know yourself going into it. As far as beta reading goes, because a lot of times, well, I'm trying not to skip to the other question. I was about to say something that would move forward.
It's fine. If we flow into it, we flow into it. Go ahead.
Okay. Because a lot of time I've seen, since I've been in the YouTube space, especially with indie authors, they will put out calls for beta readers. And that is because they're indie authors. So they might not know as many people that read the genre, as many people are interested in reading the book that they have put out. So they're relying on people that view their channel, who view their content, to read their books. And that's not to say that's not a great idea and that doesn't help. It does quite a bit, but it also gives you a bunch of varying opinions on your book because people just want to read it because they've been watching your channel and that doesn't necessarily make for a good beta reader. So just because you want to do something doesn't mean you should do something. It's one of those things that as a beta reader, there is a cost that you should count up before you take on that mantle of doing that. And I think that's a misconception, that is just something that you can just jump into and do, and it's not that important, it's not that big a deal. But no, it really is. It really is important. It's really something that you should think about before you get into. Especially because depending on where the author is in their writing journey, you very well could be some of the only feedback they get before this book comes out. And if they are relying on you to give them thorough feedback, to be punctual with your feedback, to be thorough with your feedback, and you're not, then you're doing that author a disservice. So,
and I would say that sort of leads to another misconception I had on like the writing end of it, is like that you need to know the betas. You don't. You really don't. So when thinking about like the betas, which were really more of an alpha, or no, they were betas, but well, I guess that's a good thing. Anyway, my thoughts are all over the place. So the betas I got for #FirstRomance, I knew them all. Now, it worked out in a way because they all read romance and they had reviewed romance, so it wasn't quite a like issue. But #FirstRomance is a Christian romance, and only one of them, I mean, I think I used two betas. Only one of them read Christian romance. Maybe that's fine, right? But also, had I thought about, oh, I don't have to know them, I can put out a call for people that read Christian romance and put these things in, right? So like Christian romance, people that have experience working with social services, right? Like if I had put out a call, I could have crafted some applicants who knew varying levels of what the text was coming with, and I would have known more certainly exactly that I was getting exactly the experience that I needed. But because I was like, misconception, oh, I need to like know them because it's so early and the book is so like I gotta keep it in the, you don't. I mean, it's disconcerting to think that you have to put this much trust in people that you don't know. But that's where I guess like research comes in. If you're doing a call, and like Shay, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're doing a call, I would think that you could ask for the applicants to include links to previous reviews or something where you could see reviews that they've done on other books.
I've seen applications like that. I've seen like if you have a blog or if you have a place where you host reviews, if you wouldn't mind attaching a link in this thing, because usually what I've seen is like a Google form. And it's usually for people who like for example, I beta read for Lazelle's book that comes out next year. And there was not only was there like a form, but there was like forms to fill out after you read with like a list of questions, a list of things like as you got through certain parts of the story. I beta read for other people who in the draft they gave me, they had questions after each chapter that they wanted to be answered, so that they knew like how things were progressing through the story. Did you catch certain things? Did things come through? How were you feeling about certain characters after certain things happened? It really depends on the author, and that again goes into how in depth and how much you want to know. Because when you are alpha reading or critique, yes, those being people you know makes a bunch of sense, because those are very early stages in the book. Usually those are people who, it's really, really important to that they know you and they know how you write and they know how you express things to be able to help you in that area. Beta readers, it's not really about you as a writer and how you're trying to express things. It's about, as a writer, are you expressing these to where the reader gets them, whether they know you or not? And that's where, not knowing a beta reader actually helps, because it's like, if you don't know me, are you still getting the lesson? Are you still getting the message that I want you to get out of this book if you've never met me? And that's where it helps. But again, what I've learned in the misconception as far as a writer is just them giving me their feedback is enough. No, people don't know what they don't know. So they don't know if you want to know, hey, was this character antagonizing enough? Was this scene, was the emotion enough? So they don't know, hey, maybe I should tell you this right here, that this felt right here. So as a writer, you have to be proactive as well. And that's why I said, as far as just because you want to do something doesn't mean that you should do something. Are you willing to put in that work? Are you willing to fill out that form? Are you willing to answer questions after every chapter? Are you that invested in helping this author's story be the best that it could be? Or do you just want to read something before everybody else reads it? Because that's two very different things. So those are things that, like, I just encourage you to think about as a beta reader, because again, like I said, like, I've seen where like 40 different people have filled out for someone's beta read application, but only 5, 6, maybe 10 people return the feedback. So then it's like, well, did you guys really, really want to read it? Or did you read the story and you thought it was cool and it wasn't your cup of tea? Like, these are all things that you have to really consider. Just because the synopsis sounds like something you're interested in, is it something that even if you don't like the story, are you going to continue to read it all the way through to fruition so that you can still help this author make it a better story? Or are you going to quit? Because it's not a book you bought that DNF makes sense, right? Because that's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to get this book to be the best that it could be. And DNF in a book that hasn't even come out don't really help the author now, does it?
Yeah, and that thing about like you basically doing it for clout, that's not the flex you think it is, homie. Like, it's not the flex you think it is. If you're like, oh, I beta read for X, X, and X, and it comes out and it's no bueno, or it's not as good as it could have been. So for instance, if I constantly am like reading and reviewing romance and raving about how I love a well done miscommunication trope, there are lots of not well done ones because they be silly miscommunications that could have been fixed very easily, and in any other real life scenario would have been fixed very easily, right? But a well done one where it's like, dang, there's really no way for them to have understood that, and now here we go on this, that's cool, well done. I actually don't like miscommunication shows, but go with me for the purpose of this little. I hate them. I hate them all equally. But anyway, I say I love them. Say I love them. And I'm always talking about it on my channel. And then I review a Talia Hibbert book. And I'm like, oh, y'all, I'm beta reading this Talia Hibbert book, rada, 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 which like isn't necessarily something that I think it's appropriate to be announcing anyway, because like that's the author's business. You should let all announcements about that book that's not out yet come from the author. So, bleh. But anyway, say I'm like, oh, I'm reading blah, blah, blah. And then it comes out and there's a miscommunication trope and it's done really badly. Now it's like, well, Britt Beta read it and she knows all about what like that special sauce that makes miscommunication tropes actually. Why didn't she share that with the author? Right. So then, however the book does, you kind of a little bit gets on you because you're expected to be there and be a part of the team that's making it go really well, making it the best it can be. And if you have certain strengths that you're too lazy to share with the author because you don't want to fill out the form after each chapter, or what, you're not open to follow-up questions, okay, that makes you look crazy to the author who will share that with their colleagues, right? Oh, Britt's a terrible beta reader. Don't ever choose her. Which is also crazy because like I'm a writer, so then other writers I'd want to be in community with later looking at me like, but you're not a good colleague because you screwed over another writer out of laziness and chasing clout. It's whack, right? So really think about the fact that it does take work. The work that you do on the book reflects in some ways on you. And if you do a really poor job, or if you do a really good job, people talk. That author might share your name with your friends for better or for worse, and then people have your name in their mouth, and you want that to be a glowing reflection of your work and not a condemnation of your character.
I think also a misconception is that just because you give advice, it'll be listened to. That's not true either. It's not true either. You can point out something and say that something didn't make sense or it didn't sit right or it wasn't it. It is still on that author what they want to change if they want to change things, right? I've said plenty of times that I don't believe that I will put out a book that someone is not going to like. Like I know that there's gonna be an issue with someone's gonna have an issue with every story I write, specifically because all the stories I write are for us. So somebody gonna have an issue with it, period. I just know that's gonna be a thing. But as long as I've been made aware of the issue and I'm okay with that issue being made known, I'm fine with that. I just don't want it to be an issue that I wasn't aware of, something that I didn't allow myself to see. If I'm okay with, oh, this conversation is about black bad mamas in this book, and that's what I want you to have a conversation about, then when you say, oh, the mom in this book was horrible, and I don't understand why this mom was horrible, well, that's the conversation I wanted you to have. So that's fine. I didn't change the mother because she's meant to be that way. That's perfectly fine. As a beta reader, you have to be okay with that. You have to understand that, like, sometimes authors have reasons behind the things that they are doing. That doesn't take away from the advice that you gave. That doesn't mean that you didn't have strong arguments. That doesn't mean that you weren't right. That doesn't mean any of those things. But the bottom line is, don't mince words when it comes to your viewpoints on the story, because the only person that can feel any type of way about that when it comes out is you. You are the only person that can feel that type of way. Now, when I say don't mince words, I obviously do not mean be an a-hole. Please understand that. Tact, learn it, use it, apply it. Okay. I don't mean be a jerk. I do mean be real. I do mean be clear. I do mean be precise. I mean those things because that is important. I mean, be true to you, be true to yourself, be true to how you feel as you're reading the story. But also understand that it is not your story. You are an assistant on a team of people helping this story come out. You are helping, but it is not your story. And as much as you may love a story, as much as you may think this helps or this changes or this makes this story better, that's not on you to decide. It is only on you to what? Give your opinion, give your views, give your thoughts, and let the chips fall where they may. As a Brit, Brit being a Christian, you shake the dust off your feet. You say what you gotta say, and you let it be done. You let it go, and that's that on that. Really, truly, because like again, like with this will be the first the book that comes out in February that Lizelle it'll be the first book that's published that I beta read. Everything else that I've read as a critique partner, I read as an alpha reader. So this will be a different thing for me. So I'm even curious to see what changes were made in that book as a beta reader based off of the things that I said. Right, because that's a different type of thing, because again, it's been through eyes already before it got to me, right? And it's gonna go through some more eyes after it's gotten to me. That's what happens in the case of beta reading, right? And so I know, one, I'm not going to take offense to nothing that did stay or didn't stay. I'm not going to take offense to any of that, because again, that's her book, baby. That's what she saw was best for her story. I'm going to support, I'm going to review, I'm going to feel good about the story that comes out. I'm going to be ready, to support that in that. But I'm also glad that I was just able to be a part of that. And as a reader, that should be enough for you. Like Britt said this earlier, like clout can't be why you're beta reading. You can't be beta reading to get your name in somebody's acknowledgments. You can't be beta reading because you want people to come to you. Like, it has to be truly because you believe in the story, you believe in the author. You want to see them succeed, you want to see the book succeed. Like, beta reading, to me, it has to come from a positive space. You have to come into it truly wanting the best for the person that you're beta reading for. That's just me, how I feel about it.
Yeah. So that said, how do you take all of that and make and like be a really great beta reader? Um, one, be honest with yourself, right? If you could be a really great beta reader whose life is just really hectic right now and you know you can't meet deadlines. So I think one thing that makes a good beta reader is honesty with yourself and integrity with what that truth is. And then integrity towards the author where you're telling the truth. We've already sort of gone through some things that make a good beta reader, just like implicit in our responses, but just to explicate. Honesty, tact, grace, discretion. Like again, announcements about that book should come from the author, not you. You have no ownership over that story whatsoever. And honestly, I mean, whether the author asks you not to say anything or not, that should be your default. Unless the author asks you to say something, you should remain circumspect about the fact that you even are beta reading. Um, is my opinion as an author and my preference. Like people that I ask to beta read first romance, I'm not expecting them to talk about the book with anyone or to even say that they read it. Like if I wanted it to be said, I would have said it, right? So just like discretion makes a really good beta reader. And then also sharing life experience where relevant, right? So the reason that you were asked or accepted into beta reading is because you have some knowledge that the writer wants to see how that bumps up against the representation in the book, right? So for example, with hashtag first romance, there's a lot of representation about like fostering and social services, et cetera, et cetera. Didn't occur to me to even ask for betas to respond to that, but Deidre beta read for me and she was like, tactfully, right? Like, you didn't ask this question in your list of questions. I don't mean no harm. My mother worked in social work for 15 years, and there are just some things that don't quite make sense about the representation. And if you want to like have a phone call about it, I'm totally fine to do that. Also, here's a suggestion for something that would make more sense for the job description you're describing for this character, right? Super helpful. And then what? I can take it or not. I can follow up with her or not. And I did, and that completely changed the way that this character is operating, and it makes more sense, right? And then I feel confident as a writer that I'm producing something that is honest and like true to life, because this is not a fantasy. And yes, it's a fiction, so on some level, like sure, make it up, but not in a way that's distracting for people who have lived that circumstance. You don't want the fiction of your book to be distracting, right? And so sharing your life circumstance can add validity to what you're saying, especially if it's a big ask, because in the grand scheme of things, it was. It was a big thing to reconfigure this character's job because it played heavily in the language and the settings and all these different things. And so I would have needed a really good reason to listen to that feedback. But she set it up as my mother worked in this field for 15 years. I have seen it, I've heard her talk about it. This is what happened. This is what happens. This is a good compromise, right? So when you're making large scale feedback and like critiques, it might be useful to say this isn't necessarily something that I've seen based on X experience, right? Like cite whatever experience you're talking about. This might be more realistic for X. So it is helpful if you say, especially if you're saying this is not accurate, to offer some sort of alternative, if only to get the author thinking about different things. They may not take that alternative, but it may get them thinking about, okay, I don't want to do that, but I could take this from that and do X, right? And it's just helpful, and that just goes into being kind. Because receiving feedback is stressful, as we know, we've talked about that before, but beyond the stress of it all, writers have deadlines. And if you're asking for a large scale revision, giving them a direction will help them feel better about how they can undertake that in a timely manner. So that is my biggest thing is like use your experience, use your tact and empathy, and like if you have viable suggestions based off of your experience, offer them because they'll take it or they won't. But it's if it's tactfully given, I think it's better to give it and let them sort out what they want to take and not, and then like not offer it at all. Maybe they would have really loved to hear that.
I My best advice is going to come down to the thing I always say, because everything kind of hinges on this, and it's know yourself, know your time, know how you can spend time reading the story, because you're not just reading a book. You're not reading it to get to the end of the story. You're reading it to go through and analyze it. Like, it's not just a leisurely thing. So you have to be willing to put that time in. You have to be willing to put that energy in. And sometimes you don't have it. Sometimes you don't have it. It has been that way for me. It has been that way for me multiple times. Like, something is going on in my life, and at the time that I started reading it, everything was great. Something hit me in the middle of it, and I was out. It was out. And I'll have to figure out a way, like, okay, let me just get all my strength together. And today I'm gonna just sit down and read, and I'm gonna analyze, and I'm gonna get through it all in one day. And I'll do it. But it takes everything in me to be able to corral and get that if I'm dealing with a bunch of things in my life at that time, right? So it takes knowing yourself, knowing where you're at, knowing your capacity before you sign up for things. Because again, like Britt said, authors have deadlines. Authors have things that they're trying to get done and things they want to get accomplished. And you could be, again, 40 people filled it out. If only 5 people are giving feedback, that's a lot of feedback you expected to get to be able to, like, okay, if I thought 40 people were filling it out and 15 of them understand this scene and 5 don't, but instead only 5 people filled it out and all 5 don't understand this scene, then I'm going to go with, I need to rewrite this scene, compared to had everybody done it. And then I found out that no, majority of my readers got this scene. These 5 didn't. So I don't necessarily need to completely do a complete rewrite. I just might need to tweak a few sentences, tweak a few reactions in this scene, and I got it. You know what I mean? So it's just being aware of your capacity at the start of whatever it is that you're beta reading. Again, like I said, usually there's a call out or you ask. One of the two. One of the two are happening. Either somebody's putting a call out and you're like, "Ooh, I want to do it," or you know a writer and you're like, "Hey, if you ever want a beta read, I want a beta read." But in both of those situations, you are saying, this is something I want to do. And if it's something that you want to do, count up the cost before you get into it. Because again, even as a reviewer, your reputation becomes on the line for these things, right? Like Vina, as we know, Vina gets access to a lot of books. We're constantly hearing about new books where she's constantly getting books sent to her as a reviewer. Being a reviewer and doing that, it can garner you really, nice things as far as the bookish community goes. But that's if you are creating an environment where people know that they can trust you to give honest feedback. They know that you can articulate your thoughts very well. They know that they're going to get that in a timely manner. Those are things that only you can control. So if this is something that you want to do, just make sure that is what you're doing in that time. Don't sign up to beta read 12 books at one time and then all them books come in. I mean, y'all remember when we were trying to figure out NetGalley and that happened because we didn't know how to use it, and all them arts start coming in, and then, hey, I don't even want to try all this. I didn't know that's how this was gonna work. So again, like, think about that going into there, right? Because every story isn't for everybody, and just because you like the author doesn't necessarily mean you're supposed to read it or get into it, yeah, that's mine.
Yeah, so we had a flow, but we ended up talking over all of our talking points all at once, so it's fine. What are y'all's thoughts about beta reading? Do you beta read? Do you like beta reading? Do you want to get into beta reading? Let us know in the comments. Obviously, the comment prompt is beta reader, please. So let us know. We want to know because we're very nosy. Right, exactly. So anyway, we will see y'all next time in November. That's crazy town. And it'll be Nano November. So we'll see what y'all are writing. You'll see what we're working on. Either way, we'll see you later. Bye.